Good day. My name is Vardhan Hussain, and today I will be speaking about the ongoing trade war between the US and China and the massive Belt and Road Initiative taken by China. The Belt and Road Initiative, or the BRI, qualifies as the world's biggest infrastructural development initiative ever taken by any nation to increase trade around the world, exchange of cultures, traditions, values and thoughts, but most importantly, gaining political and economical superiority. Chinese Prime Minister Xi Jinping introduced the BRI as the modern Silk Route in the year 2013, and the BRI is projected to be complete by the year 2049. For the smooth running and successful completion of BRI, Xi Jinping has partnered with more than 65 countries around the world and continues to look for allies. China has made formal agreements with nations by massive investments, fundings, offerings, creating infrastructure development and creating employment in these countries. These partnerships might have adverse effects on the ongoing trade war between US and China. The BRI is estimated to cost around $7 to $8 trillion. China is investing in these futuristic plans with the aim of achieving superiority globally and to dominate the world trade. Let's see how the development of BRI and ongoing trade war will affect the global economy in the coming future. As we are all aware that the current world trade situation is not at its best due to the ongoing trade war between US and China. In the past year and a half, US and China have been trading blows through high tariffs. US cannot see China growing at such a pace and fears that China might become a superpower soon. So it slaps high tariffs on Chinese products coming into the US, and China retaliates by imposing even higher tariffs on the goods that it specifically and exclusively produces for the US. It is believed that the past administrations of the US and China were not in good terms, which accelerated this trade war. Today, this war has started to negatively affect the world economy. Today, at some level, the decisions that businesses make are being affected by this ongoing trade war. Businesses are not sure where the markets will be open to them in future or not, and this impacts their investment decisions. The global economy is slowing down due to this growing tensions between the US and China. These might never end, as US doesn't want to be outcompeted by China. No matter how many restrictions and tariffs they impose on Chinese products, China will continue to grow, as it is the factory of the world, not only the US. And for example, especially Huawei, that is a Chinese company that has ruled the world in the name of technology. Not only US, all the world is accessible to Huawei technology as it is really cheap. Huawei's technology is very cheap because it is highly subsidized by the Chinese government. And the US industries are dependent on this Huawei technology. Both the nations need to understand that they are interdependent on each other and they need to come on a common conclusion or a common decision. This trade war and the BRI has now started to part the world. This war between the superpowers has now started to divide the world. After the commencement of the BRI, countries of the world are taking sides and are grouping. Some countries want to retain their powers and they stay with the US, while others who seek financial and economic support are little inclined towards China. For example, the Quad, that is US, Australia, India and Japan. As a group, they have stepped up their efforts to counter China with the development of BRI. As per reports, the Quad is now considering a joint infrastructural plan to counter the China's BRI. But it is certainly not sufficient, as on the other hand, China has made agreements with more than 65 countries and the numbers are still growing. The 65 countries might not be as rich as the Quad or the countries in Quad, but are certainly rich in resources, have the right geographical locations for the success of BRI. This is a major plus point for China. But China has faced a lot of criticism on BRI as well. Many Western countries like Germany are reluctant to sign the pacts with Chinese because they are more concerned about the economic sustainability of the world and adverse effects on the environment because of the development of BRI. Many of these critics call the Chinese investment projects as over-ambitious. Most of the world trade decisions were always made by the Western countries, but China wants to move forward by its massive investments. For a better insight, let's go a little deeper into the BRI and the Chinese history of the Silk Road. The Silk Road was one of the most important trade routes of the world. A 6,400 kilometer route full of deserts, mountains, distinct temperatures and different landscapes, and the constant threat of bandits. It was not only a single road, but it was a vast network of many caravans. The Silk Route connected China to Europe in the Roman Empire. Silk was of high demand in Rome, but the Chinese only knew how to produce it. It took 2 years to make a trip on this route, but it was all worth it. Thousands of camels carried not only silk, but spices and other commodities from China to the Europe. And in return, Europe gave gold, gemstones and glass. Due to this trade, not only the commodities were exchanged, but also religions and traditions. Cities were developed along the Silk Road. The trade also carried diseases, for instance, the bubonic plague that killed numerous of Europeans. The Silk Road started to decline after the bubonic plague, and it was replaced by the new maritime routes. Today, the BRI is the modern Silk Route. The Chinese Prime Minister Xi Jinping says that the BRI opens new space for growth in the world economy. BRI is seen as a new platform for the world trade and investment. It also ensures the well-being of many people in different countries. BRI is a massive infrastructure investment scheme. New railways make connectivity very strong for countries. Investment in the ports will develop maritime trading. The massive infrastructure of the BRI would be done by the Chinese state-owned companies, as they have gained a lot of experience by developing China's infrastructure in the past 40 years. Unlike the traditional Silk Route, China this time wants to create more influence and control in the world. The vision of the Chinese Prime Minister is crystal clear. He wants to join hands with Asia, Europe, South Africa and even beyond. And through the BRI, China aims to reach the European markets like never before. China knows that many of the European nations will be a part of European Union in the coming future, some as soon as 2025. Partnering with these nations will create a win-win situation for China. Not only in the Europe, China has prospects all over the world, starting from Russia, Pakistan, Uzbekistan, Sri Lanka, Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand, Myanmar, the Association of Southeast Asian Countries, even Cambodia, Kyrgyzstan, all these nations. China has a grasp over all of them. The point to be noted here is that all the primary targets of China are either developing or underdeveloped countries. Does this has any specific reasons? Yes, China is playing smart by ensuring investment and fundings to these nations, and being developing or underdeveloped, these nations could not refuse the proposal of China. And not only for the monetary help, these nations also look forward to be a part of the global trade. On the other hand, from the perspective of the organizations like European Union and the World Trade Organization, etc., they are more concerned about the economic, financial sustainability of these developing nations. They fear that these who have partnered with China will have to repay massive debt repayments. And if they could not, and they are unable to repay, China would start acquiring their lands in the name of trade. For instance, Sri Lanka was unable to pay millions of dollars of debt to China. And because of this, Sri Lanka had to give control of its ports to China for 99 years. Sri Lanka sees it as a positive thing because they would probably be more in the trade with around the world. But as per the analysts, Sri Lanka should be more efficient in managing its debts. And also the world again criticizes China and accuses China of creating such debt traps for these nations. As the criticisms persist, it cannot be denied that China is building projects like never before. For example, the China-UK rail link. This rail would link China and UK in just 17 days. That's about a third of time that would be taken by a ship to transport the cargo by sea. A lot of Chinese companies have sent their workers overseas to build roads, pipelines, railway networks all around the world. Ports are also being developed for maritime trade. There are several projects that are being carried out for the first time to improve the connectivity of China with the rest of the world. China is simply doing this to boost up China's slowing economy, plus it wants to make it easier to source and transport oil, gas and fuel for the future generations. Additionally, as per analysts, China also seeks to expand its political influence in the world, but this is denied by the Chinese government. But some political distress is already seen and witnessed in some parts of the world. For example, in Sri Lanka, the local communities have started to protest against their own government because they gave 60% of the hold to Beijing of the major ports. Despite of all the criticisms, accusations and obstructions, China continues to move forward with its Belt and Road Initiative with confidence, and it seems that it would gain success in the coming future. China has left nations, political groups, organizations, businesses and every individual with a very big question. Is China going to be the supreme power of the world after this initiative? What about your country? Is your government pro-China or anti-China? Tell me in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Thank you.